The end of our world did not arrive with a scream, but with a silence so profound it swallowed the sun. On a Tuesday morning, crisp with the false promise of normalcy, at precisely 0947 Earth Standard Time, the heavens did not open. They closed. They came not as distant points of starlight, but as vast, geometric abscesses bleeding into the blue. Celestial leviathans, whose sheer mass devoured the light, casting continents into premature twilight. One moment, humanity was alone, the masters of its tiny, fragile marble. The next, we were not just observed, but eclipsed. If you're captivated by humanity's defiance in the face of annihilation, show this story some love. Like, subscribe, share, and comment your thoughts below. The fight is just beginning. Dr. Sarah Chen's porcelain coffee mug, a gift from her daughter, etched with a cartoon galaxy, met the polished floor of the Global Space Monitoring Station in a violent symphony of shards. The liquid, once steaming with mundane comfort, bled across the tiles like a dark omen. It was not the simultaneous deafening shriek of every proximity and deep-range alarm that paralyzed her. It was the view on the main display. 12 monolithic sentinels, each a jagged sculpture of dark alloy, the size of a sprawling metropolis, hung in the silent void just beyond the comforting, familiar face of the moon. Their hulls were not merely metal. They were tablets of obsidian, carved with pulsating sigils that glowed with a sickly, internal radiance, a language of conquest, written in cold light. And behind them, spilling out across the starfield like a necrosis infecting space itself, were the smaller shapes, hundreds, then thousands, encircling the pale blue dot in a perfect, suffocating net. How many? Sarah's voice was a dry rustle in the cacophonous room. The young technician beside her, his face bleached of color, stared at his console as if it were delivering his own death sentence. Over 3,000 confirmed contacts, Director. They didn't approach. They just manifested. No warp signatures, no energy spikes, nothing. The violation was absolute, technological and spiritual. Across the planet, the message arrived not as a transmission, but as an imposition. It slithered into every frequency, hijacked every screen, echoed from every speaker, from the towering holographic billboards in Tokyo to the crackling transistor radios in remote villages. The voice that followed was not organic. It was the sound of tectonic plates grinding, of ice cracking over a deep, dark ocean. It spoke with the weariness of infinite repetition. People of Earth, I am Admiral Vekthul of the hegemony of Zakai. Your world has been assessed. It is now designated for assimilation. In the Emergency Command Center, a vault buried a mile beneath the Swiss Alps, where the air tasted of recycled sterility and dread, President Elias Martinez of the United Earth Defense Council felt the words land in his gut like stones. Around the hexagonal table, the gathered leaders of nations that had squabbled over borders and resources for centuries now shared a single, unified expression, a pale, grim fortitude. General Eris Harrison, his hands, scarred from long-ago conflicts in Kandahar and Jakarta, clenched into fists on the polished surface. For 10 millennia. The voice droned on. We have brought order to the chaos of the galaxy. 612 worlds thrive under our immutable peace. We offer you the calculus of survival. Disarm your militaries. Dismantle your governments. Accept our governance. In return, you will persist. You will have order. You will have the protection of the hegemony. Protection from what? Harrison growled, the sound low and feral in the sealed room. From you? As if in answer, the alien voice continued, its monotone somehow magnifying the horror. Statistical analysis indicates protest. Be advised, 17 species have elected resistance. They believed their primitive arsenals could challenge eternity. They are now statistical footnotes. Their atmospheres are ash. Their biospheres are silent. Their memories are archived and deleted. On the central display, satellite feeds painted a masterpiece of despair. The largest of the alien constructs had positioned itself directly over the heart of North America, its shadow a cancer spreading from the Rockies to the Appalachians. Smaller vessels loomed like dagger points over every major city. London, Shanghai, Mumbai, Cairo, each a suspended guillotine. However, Vexthul intoned, a hint of glacial condescension entering the processed syllables. Mercy is a variable in our equation. Primitive cognition requires temporal adjustment to process inevitable outcomes. You are granted 72 of your hours to compute our offer. Use this interval to observe our fleet. Consult your leaders. Conclude that resistance is a function equal to 0. Silence in the bunker was a physical weight. Every eye, from the aged Premier of China to the young Chancellor of the European Union, fixed on Martinez. He felt the mass of human history, all its wars, its art, its loves, its petty and glorious struggles, pressed down upon his shoulders. He stood, the legs of his chair scraping a sharp protest against the floor. He walked to the comm panel, the footsteps echoing in the tomb-like quiet. His finger hovered over the button that would broadcast humanity's first words to its would-be executioners. He did not think of treaties, or of missile silos, or of political ramifications. He thought of his daughter, learning to paint sunflowers in their Madrid apartment, sunlight streaming through the window. He pressed the button. Admiral Vexthul, this is President Elias Martinez of United Earth. We have heard your offer. We have observed your fleet. We comprehend the function you have described. He took a breath that seemed to draw in the collective hope and fear of 11 billion souls. Our answer is no. We decline. For a span of heartbeats that stretched into an eternity, there was only the hum of the bunker's life support. Then the grinding voice returned, now laced with the first trace of something alien. Not anger, but a profound, processing confusion. Clarification. Your auditory processors may be deficient. We offer continued existence, suboptimal but extant. Refusal is a logical error. Refusal equals total biospheric termination. General Harrison reached over and took the microphone, his voice a slab of granite. We heard you just fine. The answer is still no. Illogical. Probability of defiance after visual confirmation of hegemony capital ships is 0. Your cognitive processes are impaired by shock. Recalculate. Text, a new voice, calm and scholarly, entered the exchange. Dr. Elizabeth Kane, Earth's preeminent xenobiologist, leaned in. Admiral, your confusion is noted, but humanity operates on an illogical variable. We have a saying, better to die on our feet than live on our knees. Consider it an irrational constant in your equation. Aboard the flagship, Omniscient Dawn, in a bridge that was a cathedral of cold light and silent, flowing data. Admiral Vexthul stared at the holographic projection of the blue-green world. His chitinous fingers, four-jointed and the color of polished gunmetal, traced the old scar that furrowed the dense hide of his neck, a souvenir from the Trelk War, the last genuine conflict the hegemony had faced 53 standard years ago. That species had lasted 6 hours. Analysis, Tactical Officer Krell. Vekfel's voice was softer now, internal. The younger officer consulted his streams. Primitive nuclear and kinetic weaponry, sir. Limited orbital defense platforms. No fleet to speak of. Their most advanced craft cannot escape their own gravity well. Defiance is statistically impossible. It must be a bargaining ritual, a bluff to negotiate better subjugation terms. Vekfel's multifaceted eyes remained fixed on Earth. And yet, they unified their planetary governance in less than 1 solar cycle upon detecting our preliminary probes. A species perpetually at war with itself achieved global cohesion under threat. That is not a variable in any prior conquest model. Poll their full historical database, not just the military summaries, the art, the philosophy, the stories. While the hegemony fleet hung in silent, ominous tableau, Earth descended into a surreal duality. On the surface, people went to work, hugged their children, tended their gardens, all under the oppressive, silent shadow of the Armada. The world held its breath. But beneath mountains, under deserts, and in the silent reaches beyond the moon's terminator, a different heartbeat pulsed. President Martinez, escorted by General Harrison, found himself descending via a maglev train into a geothermal complex beneath the Rocky Mountains. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of ozone and machine oil. The doors opened, not onto a bunker, but onto a vista that stole his breath. It was a cavern of human defiance, so vast, its ceiling was lost in artificial clouds of coolant mist. Stacked in orderly rows, stretching into the gloomy distance, were ships. They were nothing like the blocky, utilitarian shuttles of Earth's known space programs. These were angular, predatory things, their hulls forged from a material that seemed to drink the light, leaving only a silhouette of deeper darkness. They looked less like vehicles and more like fragments of a starless night, given form and purpose. "Project Dark Sky," said Colonel Jacob Stevens, emerging from the mist. His face was lined with the fatigue of decades of secrets. "Officially, Mr. President, this place and I do not exist." "How long?" Martinez whispered, his voice echoing in the monumental space. The first prototype, powered by a recovered Hegemony Scouts reactor core, hovered in a hidden Nevada hangar 31 years ago, Stevens said, a ghost of pride cutting through his exhaustion. "We called it the Roswell Epiphany. We didn't hide the crash from the public out of fear, sir. We hid it out of strategy. We learned we were not alone, and that the neighbors were imperialists. So we decided to prepare." The president walked among the silent, sleek vessels, a hand resting on a cold, non-reflective hull. "Just this facility?" Stevens allowed a tight smile. 500 operational craft here, 11 sister facilities across the globe, plus the shipyards on Luna's far side, the fabrication platforms in the asteroid belt, and the deep space anchorages. Martinez stopped. "Deep space? We have assets outside the Sol system." "For 15 years, sir," Stevens nodded. "The data core from the crash contained the theoretical framework for a localized jump drive. We didn't just copy it. We refined it. Our Voidwolf-class scouts have been mapping hegemony border worlds for a decade. We know their patrol routes. We know their calm frequencies. We've been listening. We've been learning. The scale of the deception, the patience of the ambition, was staggering. Humanity hadn't just built a secret army. It had built a secret civilization, intertwined with its public one, a hidden root system of staggering depth and reach. On the third day, as the final hours of the ultimatum dripped away like blood from a wound, Vexthul's final transmission arrived. The condescending patience was gone, replaced by a frigid Chon Jinfa Halafa Nu. Humans, your temporal allocation expires. In 6 of your hours, planetary cleansing protocols will initiate. Your cities will achieve fusion temperatures. Your oceans will vaporize. Your genetic sequence will be purged from the universal record. This is the final logical iteration of our offer. Surrender or be zeroed. In the Alpine Command Center, the atmosphere had transformed. The fear had been refined, alloyed with a hardened resolve. The faces around the table were those of soldiers standing to a precipice, not with despair, but with a grim readiness to leap. Global status, Martinez said, his voice steady. General Harrison's eyes gleamed. The Black Armada is primed and dispersed. 6,000 vessels across underground facilities are hot. Lunar Command reports 3,000 Moonfang-class interceptors ready for immediate launch. A hologram of Admiral Li Chen, commander of the lunar forces, flickered to life. Orbital defense grid is live and cloaked. Their sensors still paint us as pre-industrial. Colonel Stevens's face appeared on another screen, deep within the Rocky Mountain complex. Deep space asset groups, Shadow, Spectre, and Wraith, are in position at the system's Lagrange points. Jump drives are singing. All they need is the key, Mr. President. Martinez felt a profound, surreal calm descend upon him. He took the microphone, not as a supplicant, but as a commander finally revealing his board. Admiral Vexthul, we acknowledge your final communication, and we thank you for this 3-day grace period. It has been immeasurably useful. A pause from the void. Useful. Define useful. Useful for completing our final deployments, Martinez said, a razor edge of steel entering his tone. You made a critical error in your assessment, Admiral. You assumed our visible technological level was our ceiling. You assumed your arrival was a surprise. You never computed the possibility that our defiance was not a plea, but a declaration. That by demanding we kneel, you did not invite surrender. You declared war. And humanity has been preparing for this war since before your empire first turned its eyes toward our star. Aboard the omniscient Dawn, a low-pitched alarm began to pulse. Vexthul turned from the comm. Report! Sensor Officer Krethel, her scaled fingers trembling over her panel, looked up, her voice thin. Admiral, massive subsurface energy spikes, planetary, dozens of sources, reading like hidden fleet carriers, powering to full. But the signatures were masked until now. They were always there. Vexthul's twin hearts performed a sickening syncopation. Our sensors penetrate all known stealth matrices. Theirs are unknown, sir. On Earth, Martinez gave the smallest of nods to General Harrison. The general's voice, when he spoke, was the sound of a tomb ceiling. All commands, all stations, execute Operation Midnight Howl. He looked at the president, who delivered the words that would ignite the stars. Release the Black Armada. The first act of humanity's defiance was not a roar, but a sigh. Across the planet, mountain faces that had stood for eons slid apart with seismic groans. vast silo doors in desolate deserts irised open. From the dark side of the moon, 1,000 pinpricks of cold blue light ignited and streaked away from the gray surface. And from the empty blackness of space itself, at the edges of the solar system, space rippled like disturbed water, as sleek, impossible shapes dropped their cloaks and fell toward the heart of the conflict, their drives silent, their intent lethal. The hunters had just arrived in the hunting grounds, only to discover, far too late, that the prey had been hunting them all along. The silence that followed the command was the most terrifying sound Admiral Vexthal had ever processed. It was not an absence of noise, but a vacuum of data. For 3 days, his sensors had painted Earth as a predictable, primitive world, a soft target awaiting harvest. Now, that stable picture dissolved into a seething, incomprehensible fog of quantum static and phantom echoes. The planet below wasn't powering up defenses, it was unfolding them, revealing layers of technological deceit that should have been impossible for a species that, by all hegemony metrics, was still learning to crawl beyond its atmosphere. On the bridge of the omniscient dawn, the tactical hologram fizzed with angry crimson blooms. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of contacts winked into existence. They didn't emerge from hangars in neat, accessible formations. They bled from the planet's crust, from the lunar regolith, from the empty void itself, materializing with a jump-drive precision that bypassed all known laws of spatial transition. No warning surge, no temporal distortion. One moment, space was empty. The next, it was infested. Patterns. Vekthal's command was a sharp crack in the hushed dread. Identify their formation. Project their primary target. Tactical Officer Krell's voice trembled. Sir, there is no formation. They are moving in swarms. Chaotic, multi-vector approaches. They are ignoring all principles of fleet engagement. It's animalistic. That was the first core of the horror. The human vessels, sleek, black, and angular, moved with a fluid, predatory grace that defied hegemony doctrine. They didn't approach in the disciplined spearhead or defensive spheres standard to galactic warfare. They flowed like a school of piranha, like a pack of wolves splitting around a herd, a chaotic ballet that was somehow perfectly coordinated. From her command chair aboard the EDFS Nightwolf, lead ship of Pac 7, Captain Lisa Chen watched the hegemony fleet through a sensor suite fed by quantum-entangled data streams. The alien dreadnoughts, massive and proud, were clustered in a textbook orbital dominance pattern. To hegemony eyes, it displayed overwhelming power. To human eyes, trained on millennia of terrestrial predation, it was a fatal lack of imagination. All Pac 7 elements, this is Alpha, she said, her voice calm in the neural-linked comms that were utterly invisible to hegemony scans. Execute Hunt Protocol Theta. Remember the doctrine. Isolate, confuse, cripple. Target engine clusters and primary sensor arrays. We are not here to kill ships. We are here to blind and lame them. Let the wolves separate the calf from the herd. The first salvo from the hegemony flagship was a spectacle of apocalyptic intent, a column of coherent antimatter energy capable of boiling oceans and cracking continental plates. It lanced toward Earth, a verdict written in pure annihilation. It struck an energy barrier 60 kilometers above the planet's surface that shimmered into visibility for a millisecond, a honeycomb of iridescent light, and dissipated the beam into harmless ambient radiation. The omniscient dawn's bridge lighting flickered, Vexthal stared, his cognitive processes struggling to reconcile the data. "Planetary shield integrity?" he demanded. "Holding at 100%, Admiral," the weapons officer reported, disbelief rendering his voice flat. "No measurable depletion. The energy dissipation pattern is unfamiliar. It's not a shield. It's more like a reactive mesh that absorbs and redistributes the energy across the entire planetary magnetosphere." Before Vexthal could process this second impossibility, the human swarm struck. The Nightwolf and her pack didn't fire on the capital ships. They ignored them, slipping between their massive hulls with contemptuous ease. Their targets were the smaller, lighter cruiser-class vessels that formed the fleet's sensor and communication net. The human weapons fired not brilliant lances of plasma, but brief, focused pulses of invisible energy. A hegemony cruiser, the unblinking Vigil, suddenly went dark. Its running lights died. Its sensor pods erupted in silent, internal fireworks of short-circuited crystals. Its engine glow sputtered and faded. It was adrift, blind, deaf, and mute. But its hull was pristine. Its crew was alive, unharmed, and trapped in a silent, powerless tomb. All across the formation, the same story repeated. Not explosions, but amputations. The humans were surgically removing the fleet's senses and its voice. "They are targeting non-lethal subsystems," Krell shouted, the horror dawning. "They are disabling us. Why? Prisoners? Intelligence?" Vexthal understood with a chilling clarity. "No, it's worse. It's tactical. A dead ship is a hazard. A disabled ship is a burden. It requires rescue, it clogs lanes of fire, it saps morale. They are not fighting to destroy. They are fighting to demoralize and complicate." He opened the fleet-wide channel, his voice straining to project the old certainty. "All vessels, break formation, scatter, go to individual evasive patterns. Do not let them herd you." But the order was a confession of defeat, and it came too late. As the hegemony ships attempted to disperse, they found their escape vectors already occupied. From the shadow of Mars, from behind the glittering debris of the asteroid belt, a second wave of human ships, the deep space shadow units that had been waiting in total silence for years, activated their drives. They didn't block the retreat. They harried it, striking at engines and navigation arrays, funneling the panicked hegemony vessels back toward the killing zone around Earth. Aboard the lunar command post, Admiral Marcus Reyes watched the tactical map with the serene focus of a master chess player. The display was a masterpiece of human ingenuity. Blue human icons moved in complex interweaving patterns, herding the larger, slower red hegemony icons into zones of crossfire and disablement. Phase 1 complete, reported Colonel Stevens via secure link from Colorado. Their command and control is shattered. They're reacting, not acting. Initiate Phase 2, Reyes ordered. The Whisper Campaign. This was Dr. Elara Mitchell's domain. The psychological warfare specialist watched from her station as pre-recorded transmissions, crafted from decades of studying captured hegemony cultural and historical data, were injected into the enemy's compromised comms. The messages were not threats. They were worse. They were truths. To a disabled cruiser, they broadcast, "Your life support is stable. Your crew is unharmed. You have been defeated without a single casualty. Is this the order your hegemony promises? The order of the corpse?" To the fleet at large, they sent sensor snippets of other disabled ships, with annotations. The unblinking vigil has ceased combat. Its crew will be treated according to interstellar conventions of war. Your admirals never granted such courtesy to the Trelk. The effect was corrosive. Hegemony morale, built on 10,000 years of unquestioned superiority, began to fracture. For the first time, they were not the bringers of inevitable conquest. They were victims of a predator they did not understand. Fleet Admiral Thekon, commander of the 5,000-ship reinforcement armada, arriving from the Corward frontier, received Vexthal's increasingly frantic, then abruptly silent updates with mounting disbelief. A primitive species was not just resisting, it was dismantling a full conquest fleet. It was narrative-breaking, a tear in the fabric of hegemony reality. He ordered his fleet to maximum speed, his confidence tempered by a new, cold worm of doubt. As his ships translated into the Sol system's outer edge, his own sensor officer delivered the impossible. "Admiral, I am detecting gravitational echoes. Dozens of microjumps all around our periphery. There are ships here. Advanced ships. They are tracking us. They have been waiting." Thekon's command, raise shields, weapons hot, was met with a new, calm voice on his flagship's main channel. "Fleet Admiral Thekon of the Hegemony's Second Reserve. This is Captain Maria Santos of the Earth Defense Force vessel Shadow Hunter. You are entering sovereign Terran space. Your stated intent is hostile. Power down your weapons and submit to escort. This is your only warning." Thekon's rage was immediate. A single ship dares issue ultimatums to a hegemony battle group. Destroy it. 5 hegemony destroyers wheeled, their targeting systems painting the lone, sleek black ship. They fired. Their particle beams lanced through the space where the Shadow Hunter had been. It was simply elsewhere, having moved in the infinitesimal lag between targeting solution and firing command. Before the gunners could reacquire, the Shadow Hunter and 5 other previously invisible vessels materialized inside the hegemony formation, not at the edges, inside. Their attack was not a broadside, but a symphony of precise, small-scale violence. One destroyer found its primary reactor forcibly and safely shut down by a modulated EMP. Another had its launch bays magnetically sealed. A third had its external comm array sliced away by a focused particle scalpel. Thekon watched, stunned, as his vanguard was neutralized in seconds, not with cataclysmic fire, but with infuriating, clinical expertise. The human ships then vanished again, disappearing from sensors as if they had never been. Captain Santos's voice returned, still calm. "That was a demonstration of capability, Admiral. The next will be a demonstration of consequence." Observe. On Thekon's main display, a star map of the local sector, 50 light-years in radius, flickered to life. Dozens of star systems, hegemony mining outposts, agricultural colonies, minor core worlds glowed a soft blue. Then, beside each one, human ship signatures winked into existence. They weren't attacking. They were just there. A silent, undeniable presence in the heart of hegemony territory. "While you were focused on our planet," Santos explained, "we have positioned assets throughout your local sphere of influence. We know your logistics. We know your weak points. The conquest of Earth is no longer your objective, Admiral Thekon. The preservation of your own territory is. You have a choice. Withdraw now, or force us to demonstrate the full offensive potential of the Black Armada in your backyard." Thekon felt the foundations of his universe crumble. This was not warfare. This was a masterclass in strategic paralysis. The humans had turned the hegemony's own doctrine of overwhelming force against it. They had shown that true power lay not in the biggest gun, but in the perfect application of the smallest, most precise knife. Back in the maelstrom around Earth, Admiral Vexthal was a prisoner on his own bridge. Half his fleet were drifting, silent hulks. The other half were scattered, firing at ghosts, their coordination shattered. The human swarm had suddenly withdrawn, pulling back to a cordon around the planet. The silence that followed the storm of activity was more terrifying than the attack. It was the silence of the predator, watching, assessing. Then the comm channel activated. The voice was new, older, wearier, heavy with irrevocable authority. Admiral Vexthal, this is Admiral Marcus Reyes of the Earth Defense Force. Look at your tactical situation. Process it. Vexthal did. His fleet was crippled. His reinforcements were being held at bay by a phantom fleet. What is your demand? The question was ash in his mouth. Your unconditional surrender, Reyes replied. Your crews will be treated with dignity under interstellar law. You will be repatriated. Your ships will be confiscated. And you will carry a message back to your high command. A message of defiance? They will only send a larger fleet. You have won a battle, not a war. The message, Reyes continued, as if Vexthal hadn't spoken, is this. The age of imperial conquest is over. Earth is sovereign. The free species of this galaxy are sovereign. The hegemony's offer of surrender or die is hereby rescinded. We replace it with a new equation. Coexist or be dismantled. Reyes's voice dropped, becoming as cold as the void. You came here believing you were the apex predator. You were wrong. You are the herbivore who just wandered into the wolf pack's territory. You have seen our teeth. You have felt our tactics. We have studied your empire for 30 years, Admiral. We know its rhythm, its arrogance, its weaknesses. The question for your high command is not whether they can crush us. The question is whether they can survive the hemorrhage that will begin the moment they try. We will not just defend our world. We will liberate every world you have ever subjugated. We will turn your own subjects against you. We will be the specter in your starways, the flaw in your perfect order, until hegemony is just a forgotten word in a dead language. The transmission ended. On the screen, a final image appeared. The star map Thekon was seeing. The dozens of human icons poised like daggers over hegemony worlds. It was a vision of galactic revolution. Vexthal sank into his command throne. The scar on his neck throbbed, a phantom pain from a real war long past. He looked at the faces of his bridge crew, not with the arrogant certainty of conquerors, but with the dawning, horrified understanding of the conquered. They had not been defeated by a stronger force. They had been outthought, out-adapted. The human strategy was not about matching power. It was about redefining the very nature of the conflict. In the quiet of his ruined bridge, surrounded by the evidence of his own obsolescence, Admiral Vexthal of the hegemony of Zakai, conqueror of 47 worlds, did something he had never done in 3 centuries of service. He surrendered. The surrender of Admiral Vexthal's fleet was not broadcast with fanfare. It was a silent, systemic shutdown, a wave of dying engine signatures and deactivated weapon ports that swept across the orbital battlefield like a passing shadow. For the hegemony crews, it was a moment of profound, species-shattering humiliation. For the human pilots of the Black Armada, it was a moment of vindication so fierce, it tasted like copper and starlight. They had not won by being stronger in the old sense. They had won by being something the hegemony had no taxonomy for: unpredictable. On Earth, the news did not trigger universal celebration. Instead, a profound, weary silence descended. People emerged from shelters and stared at the sky, not with joy, but with the haunted eyes of survivors who had stared into the abyss and watched it blink first. President Martinez addressed the planet, his face etched with the fatigue of a man who had gambled his species and won, but knew the stakes were now infinite. "We have won our first breath," he said, his voice transmitted to every screen on the quiet planet. Not a victory, not a peace, a breath. The wolf does not celebrate when it drives the bear from its den. It watches, it guards, it prepares for the bear's return or for the next challenger. That is our state now. Eternal vigilance is the price of our no. His words were a bucket of cold water, a necessary tonic against the surge of triumphalism. The hegemony was an empire of 600 worlds. The loss of one fleet, however massive, was a sting, not a death blow. Humanity's strategy now shifted from planetary defense to galactic deterrence. And deterrence, as General Harrison noted in the first post-battle briefing, required a continued ability to inspire fear. "We cannot just be the porcupine that stung the lion," he growled, pointing at a star map now dotted with both red hegemony worlds and the new blinking blue icons of human deep space assets. "We must become the swarm of wasps that convinces the lion to never hunt in this territory again." Vexthul and his captured officers are our first emissaries. They will carry the story of their defeat back to the hegemony core. But stories fade. We need to give them a living, breathing reality to report. Thus was born Operation Scattered Sky. It was not a military campaign of invasion. It was a campaign of demonstration, a declaration of reach. Captain Anya Wraith Lee stood on the bridge of the EDFS Starfall. Her ship, one of 24 Voidwolf-class deep-range cruisers, positioned 3 light-years from the hegemony border world of Cathar. Cathar was not a major world. It was a Tier 3 resource colony, a glorified mining outpost with a population of 20 million hegemony citizens and a minor orbital garrison. It was, in the cold calculus of strategy, a perfect test subject. All elements confirmed status. Lee's voice was soft in the secure quantum channel. Shadow's hand, ready. Event horizon, ready. Silent step, systems green. Lee studied the feed. The hegemony garrison, 4 light cruiser-class vessels, and a network of automated defense platforms orbited lazily. Their patrol patterns were regular, predictable, and blind to the human ships whose stealth fields bent light and sensors around them like water around a stone. "Remember the profile," Lee said, "is a clinical demonstration. Maximum psychological impact, minimum collateral damage. We are surgeons, not bombers. Execute Phase 1, the unveiling." At her command, the Starfall and her sister ships dropped their stealth fields simultaneously. One moment, space near Qatar's primary shipping lane was empty. The next, 24 sleek black warships hung in the void. Their sudden appearance, so absolute, it seemed a flaw in reality itself. Panic erupted across hegemony channels. The garrison scrambled, their ships wheeling with admirable speed, their defense platforms powering up. A standard hailing frequency crackled with a demand for identification and intent. Lee opened a channel, broadcasting on all bands, her voice translated into the guttural hegemony trade tongue. Cathar Orbital Command, this is Captain Anya Lee of the Earth Defense Force. Do not power your weapons. Do not launch interceptors. You are witnessing a sovereign military exercise within free space. Any hostile action will be construed as an act of war and met with immediate, disabling force. The garrison commander, a mid-level officer whose entire experience was policing miners, hesitated. The protocol for an unidentified fleet appearing from nowhere did not exist. He ordered a warning shot from a perimeter platform. It was the only shot fired. Before the energy bolt had crossed half the distance, the offending defense platform shimmered and went dark. Not exploded, deactivated. A simultaneous, coordinated strike from 3 Void Wolves had delivered a cascade of nanodisruptors and focused microwaves that fried its circuitry without breaching its hull. Your defensive capabilities have been neutralized, Lee continued, her voice chillingly calm. Observe. Phase 2 began. Small, dart-like drones launched from the human vessels. They did not attack the hegemony cruisers. Instead, they swarmed the planet's orbital infrastructure, communication satellites, navigation beacons, traffic control nodes. Each was tagged with a short-range burst transmitter, then gently, precisely disabled. In under 10 minutes, Cathar was cut off from the wider galaxy. Its ships were blind, its planet mute. Do you understand? Lee broadcast, now to the planetary governor as well. We have not harmed a single being. We have not damaged a single habitation. We have, however, demonstrated that your world exists at our sufferance. Your safety is not a function of hegemony power, but of our forbearance. Phase 3 was the message. A data packet was transmitted to the governor, to every ship, to every major population center. It contained the unedited sensor logs and comm transcripts from the Battle of Earth. It showed the omniscient Dawn's futile bombardment, the swarming Black Armada, the systematic disablement of a conquest fleet, and finally, Admiral Vexthal's surrender. It ended with Admiral Reyes's final ultimatum: coexist or be dismantled. You are a message in a bottle, Lee said, her final words echoing across the suddenly silent channels. Tell your hegemony what happened here today. Tell them the rules have changed. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, the human ships reactivated their stealth fields and vanished, leaving behind a perfectly intact but utterly humbled and isolated world to grapple with the new reality. The Scattered Sky campaign repeated across a dozen minor hegemony outposts over the next 6 weeks. Each encounter followed the same pattern: sudden, impossible appearance, flawless, bloodless neutralization of defenses, the delivery of the Earth packet, and a ghostly disappearance. The psychological effect was catastrophic for the hegemony. Morale among border fleets plummeted. Reports of phantom human fleets and ghost ships created a climate of paranoia. The invincible aura of the hegemony was punctured, and into that vacuum rushed a dangerous, long-suppressed emotion among its subject worlds: hope. On the former hegemony capital world of Vorthak, High Commander Zeeth Null presided over a dying empire. The council chamber, once thrumming with the arrogant certainty of millennia, was now a tomb of flickering holograms and whispered fears. The green dots of loyal systems on the galactic map were turning amber, then red, as worlds declared neutrality or outright secession, emboldened by the human demonstrations and the sudden, glaring vulnerability of their overlords. The Drex system has severed the hyperlane relay and declared the Drex freehold, an aide reported, his voice hollow. The Kelnath tributes have ceased. Fleet Group Gamma has mutinied, declaring loyalty to their homeworld of Zeta Prime. Zethnal stared at the scar on his forehead, a relic from a war fought against a worthy enemy. Now, he faced an enemy that refused to fight a war at all, in any way he understood. They fought with shadows, with information, with the irresistible idea of choice. It was an insurgency on a galactic scale. His solitude was broken by an incoming priority transmission. It was not from a fleet or a governor. It was a direct, unencrypted broadcast on all public bands, its point of origin untraceable. The face that appeared was human, Admiral Reyes, but he looked older, his authority tempered by what seemed like genuine, grim empathy. High Commander Zethnal, leaders of the hegemony, people of its subject worlds. The greeting itself was revolutionary, addressing the ruled as well as the rulers. For 10,000 years, your empire has operated on a single, brutal principle: order through subjugation. You have called this peace. We have seen its cost in the ashes of 17 species. That era ends today, not because we have destroyed you, but because we have shown there is another way. The display split. On one side, the map of the crumbling hegemony. On the other, a new map, glowing with soft blue interconnections. It showed the liberated worlds, not as conquered territories under a new banner, but as a network, a loose, collaborative web dubbed the Galactic Cooperative. We offer no new empire, Reyes continued. We offer a concept: mutual aid, sovereign worlds, trading knowledge, sharing security, bound not by force, but by common interest. The Black Armada will not be the enforcers of this cooperative. It will be its shield, a deterrent against any power, old or new, that seeks to return this galaxy to the tyranny of the blade. He leaned forward, his gaze piercing through the light years. Zethnal, your war is lost, not in battle, but in the hearts of every being you ever ruled. You can preside over the violent disintegration of your empire, watching worlds burn in fratricidal chaos as they fight for the scraps of your power. Or you can do one last, honorable thing. Reyes paused, letting the offer hang in the static. Order a general, peaceful stand-down. Withdraw your remaining loyal fleets to core hegemony space. In return, the Galactic Cooperative will guarantee the safety of hegemony citizens and assist in the transition to a civilian, representative government for your core worlds. You can be remembered as the architect of a graceful decline, rather than the butcher of a galactic civil war. The choice is yours, but choose quickly. The tide will not wait for you. The transmission ended. In the silence of the council chamber, the weight of 10 millennia of conquest finally collapsed. Zethnal looked around at his aides, at the military governors, at the political officers. He saw no defiance left, only exhaustion and a fearful longing for an end to the fear they themselves had cultivated. He knew, with the cold certainty of a mathematician, that Reyes was right. The hegemony was a collapsed star, its own immense gravity now pulling it into oblivion. The only remaining choice was whether it would die in a supernova that consumed its neighbors, or fade quietly into a neutron star, dense, changed, but no longer a threat. With a voice stripped of all its former grandeur, High Commander Zethnal gave his final order. Recall all fleets. Transmit on all channels. The hegemony of Zakai is dissolving. All subject worlds are hereby released from their fealty. May they find their own paths. 5 years later, Admiral Reyes walked through the memorial grove on the shores of Lake Geneva. The grove was not for human war dead. There were remarkably few from the short, sharp conflict. Instead, it was a garden of remembrance for the 17 species the hegemony had erased. Each memorial was a unique sculpture. Based on the fragmentary biological and cultural data humanity had pieced together from hegemony archives. A twisting crystal spire for the silicon-based chlor, a pool of ever-rippling liquid metal for the aquatic tration. It was a promise carved in stone and glass. You are not forgotten. He was approached by a familiar figure, Admiral Vexthul. The former conqueror now wore simple civilian attire, his posture no longer rigid with command, but softened by study and a hard-won humility. He worked as a senior advisor to the Cooperative's Historical Reconciliation Project. They are unveiling the new wing of the museum today, Vexthul said, his voice still deep but lacking its former gravel of authority. The age of imperial arrogance, they are calling it. My testimony features prominently. He said it without bitterness, with the analytical tone of an archaeologist discussing a fallen civilization. Is it strange, Reyes asked, to be a living exhibit in the museum of your own empire's end? Vexthul gazed at the memorial for the Trelk, the species that had given him his scar. It is clarifying. We spent 10,000 years building a monument to control. You spent 30 years building a key to freedom. Your monument is this. He gestured to the grove, to the sky, where ships from 100 worlds drifted peacefully in orbit. It is alive. It grows. Ours was always destined to be a museum piece, because it was built on a lie that order requires oppression. They walked in silence for a time. Do you ever fear, Vexthul asked, that humanity will become what we were? That power, once tasted, is addictive? Reyes stopped, looking at a sapling from a world recently welcomed into the cooperative. Every day, it is our constant struggle, our eternal vigilance. The Black Armada is powerful, but its first and most important order is to stand down, to become invisible, the moment its protection is no longer critically needed. We are not the galaxy's police. We are its immune system, dormant until a true pathogen of tyranny appears. The moment we start enforcing our will instead of defending choice, we have lost. And there are millions of eyes from hundreds of worlds watching to ensure we remember that. Their conversation was interrupted, not by an alarm, but by a notification. A deep space listening post had picked up a signal from the satellite galaxy, the Large Magellanic Cloud. It was a distress call, repeating a simple pattern of mathematical primes. Attached was a crude image of a bipedal species under a strange sun, looking up at the sky in fear, as geometric shadows, wholly unlike hegemony designs, began to eclipse their light. Reyes and Vexthul looked at each other. The old admiral saw the fire rekindle in the human's eyes, but it was not the fire of conquest. It was the fierce, protective light of the shepherd who sees the wolf approaching a distant, vulnerable flock. The call never ends, does it? Vexthul murmured. Reyes's face settled into lines of resigned determination. No, the universe is vast, and darkness always tries to find a corner to grow in. But neither does the answer. He tapped his comm. Signal the Cooperative Council. put the Liberty and her task force on standby, and draft a message on all friendly frequencies for any species that can hear it. What shall it say? The calm officer asked. Reyes looked at the memorials around him, then at the sky, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of a species' hard-earned wisdom. Tell them, you are not alone, and if the shadows come for you, tell them the pack stands with you. We have learned how to hunt hunters. Epilogue: The Echo of a No. In the grand tapestry of the cosmos, the rise and fall of empires are but brief, violent stitches. The hegemony of Zekai was one such stitch, a dark thread of conquest that stretched for 10,000 years before finally fraying. Humanity's story did not become the next dark stitch. Instead, we became the needle, not to sew empires together, but to mend the rents they left behind. We did not conquer the galaxy, we connected it. We proved that the ultimate strength of a predator is not in its fangs, but in its choice to protect the herd. The Battle of Earth was not our greatest victory. Our greatest victory is every sunrise over a free world that never knew one. It is every trade ship that flies without an escort of gunships. It is every child on any planet who looks up at the stars not with fear of what comes from them, but with wonder at what they might one day visit in peace. The hegemony came, offering a choice: surrender or die. We gave the galaxy a better one: be free or be left behind. We are the species that said no to kneeling. And in that single, defiant syllable, we taught the universe to stand tall.